Today, on the Impact Driven Leader Monday Newswire, we discussed the life, the legacy, the presidency of Jimmy Carter. He passed away over the weekend, the 39th president of the United States. We'll discuss that. Also, a new report that just came out, homelessness. What do you think the rates did in the last year? All right, join us for Monday Newswire. Welcome to the Impact Driven Leader podcast, Monday Newswire. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. Today, joined by, as usual, producer Alex. Joining from New Jersey, where there's no threat of drones. That seemed to disappear. Like, was that just like one of the football playoff drone shows? Is that what we decided it really was? Is that what was going on? Is that New Jersey, New Jersey was so upset that they really didn't have.
What you talking about it, Tyler? The government just like flashed. Don't talk about those drones.
Don't talk about the drones. All right. Well, I just thought they were upset that they weren't representative in the college playoffs because that's the time that it came out, right before the college playoffs. And now there's no one cares about the drones. It's the drone shows. They were just practicing for one of the drone shows at one of the events, and that's what happened.
That's right. Yeah. We could go into a whole rabbit hole. I know we're here to talk about, the President Jimmy Carter and the homeless problem, but we could do a whole show about the conspiracy theory around the drones in New Jersey. Easily.
Well, one conspiracy theory or all of them? I mean, that could be an entire series.
It's funny because my dad gave me 3. My brother had a couple.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, we are here to talk about the presidency, the passing away yesterday of Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States. He was the president in my very, very early childhood. I don't remember him being president at all, to be honest. I mean, that was really before I remember much. But I did have the opportunity. My sister graduated from Liberty University in Virginia back in, I think she graduated 2017, something like that, 2018. And Jimmy Carter spoke at the convocation. And so I had the opportunity to be in the audience that day and hear Jimmy. And that was, not that long ago. He was 93, 94 years old and going and speaking. And I think one of the things that I've gathered in a little bit of my own understanding, but a little bit of reading, preparing for this, he displayed what a politician should do post office more and better than anyone else. Like his presidency might be regarded, maybe too early to tell, but might be regarded in terms of the entire history of the United States, one of the poorest presidencies, right there with Biden. Like right there. I mean, it is probably one of he did a really bad job, like of understanding everything good for the nation, so forth and so on. But for the character of the man and what he became and did for our country post-presidency, man, he is the absolute model of what a post-president individual should do. Obama needs to take some lessons.
I think a lot of presidents, probably
Obama, Bush, Clinton, go through the list, right?
We'll see what happens with Trump. But talking about leadership, Tyler, before I give my take on President Carter, you got your roundtable, your leadership roundtable.
So 2 things. The signature, part of the Impact Driven Leader community is the roundtable. It is a community where we meet together February through November. It's a 10-month journey where we meet weekly on Zoom and grow in our leadership capacity. It is really a roundtable. It's cohort groups where we'll meet for an hour and 5 to 8 people per cohort group. And that's where we experience, we learn, we go through a book study. We also go through the Awaken the Leader curriculum that I've put together, which is really about recognizing your fears and insecurities, owning how they show up, and then changing your mindsets and beliefs, really reestablishing those so that way we can lead with impact. And so that starts the first part of February. Make sure that you go to theimpactdrivenleader.com where you can find out more information about that. Apply to be a part of that community. As well, May 7th and 8th, Impact Driven Leader Summit 2, 2025 edition, May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington. You'll want to be there for that. It's going to be an amazing couple days. It's going to be a great event like last year was. So those are the 2 things coming at you fast and furious here.
Oh, it's going to be great. I'm super excited for both. Going into the peanut farmer, Jimmy Carter, I was reading a lot because, again, before my time, this was coming out of Nixon, right? Jimmy Carter was coming out of the Nixon where, he was really built on trust. Like, you can trust me. I'm going to tell you the truth. You may not like it, but I'm not. And so that's kind of how he built this whole. I was reading about all this because it was, again, before my time, and so he built that whole campaign. Won the election. Was a one-term president because he didn't do very well. The Iran crisis. He had to deal with the prisoners. I think 8 prisoners got killed.
Mm-hmm.
The economy was doing poor. He didn't really get a lot accomplished. And like you said, it could have been one of the worst terms a president had. But, looking at that portfolio, you go, man, this guy sucks. He's pretty bad. But then you go all the years post his presidency, and he kind of lives up to a lot of the lessons you teach in humility. He talked about the mistakes he's made. He made as president, the things he wish he probably could have done differently, but he owned up to like a lot of those mistakes. His service to people, started the Jimmy Carter Center, which has been a big contributor to fair and equal elections across the world, internationally, and a whole bunch of other great things that he's done, and really in service to people. The guy was married also 60. I think he married his wife when she was 18 and he was 21, and they passed away. She passed away at 96 and he was 100. I was like, wow, man, that's what a lifetime with one person.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I mean, and he had cancer just a handful of years ago, survived that, had some falls recently. Just was a very humble man who, again, if you look at his life and just say, oh, what he was for a 4-year period. Nah, I mean, what he did for his entire life. And again, the 40 years, exactly 40 years after he was president, what he accomplished is so meaningful and so impactful that it's continually felt and understood throughout the world what he meant in that position.
And I was, reading, it was hard for him to work through the bureaucracy and Congress and all these different people. He admittedly said how difficult that time was for him, coming from his humble beginnings as a peanut farmer and then getting launched as the president of the United States post Nixon. And he just said, when I left that presidency, it's almost like just so happy because he could finally feel like he could be himself and just speak the truth, speak honestly. And do the things that he truly cared about, which is helping people.
Which is really kind of, it's disturbing in a way, and yet no one wants to stand against it. It's disturbing that a man who, is known for his honesty, his truthfulness, his service to others, in one of the peak leadership positions in the world.
Right.
And he was vilified for his humility and who he was. It really just kind of, as we're getting into the next presidency, here in roughly 3 weeks, it makes you think again about just, all right, how do you go about this? But maybe that's a conversation for another day. Again, Jimmy Carter meant so much to this country. He meant so much to us as a people. And I think celebrating that, recognizing that, as we'll see continually over the next few days, is pretty important. So
yeah, I think they're going to have, January 9th, I believe, is like the memorial service. I'm sure it'll be televised.
Yeah, for sure.
Across everywhere. But
all right.
Going into humanitarianism, I guess is kind of.
Let me ask you this. So Jimmy Carter was well known for Habitat for Humanity. Have you ever done a Habitat for Humanity bill?
Yeah, in high school.
Okay, all right. We, in our network marketing business, Isogenics, our team, we did maybe 7-8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we went and helped build a house. It was fun. I'd never done it before for whatever reason. It was kind of a little bit like, where do you go? And, the construction part of it, doing the work didn't bother me. It's just like, all right, what are we doing? But it was fun. It was, definitely something that I don't think would be as popular. And it's hard to say, but I don't think as many people would know about Habitat for Humanity if it wasn't for Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Baylor for football, because a lot of football programs do this nationally, Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
I don't know if they're a sponsor, sponsorship of some kind, but we would go and build homes around Waco. We did that for a few times, I remember, each year. But yeah, humanitarianism, I think it's just going back to kind of a lot of the principles you teach about being of service to others. A lot of these presidents, post White House, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned Obama, you mentioned the Clintons. They have the Clinton Center. Obama. I don't know if there's an
What's
Obama
doing other than he's got daughters that are like in college? Does anybody know what he does?
I mean, well, there's. You want to go into conspiracy theories? That he's
the puppeteer.
Yeah, that he's been kind of running things backdoor. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But again, I think it goes back to, yeah. Well, I don't know.
All right. Well, there's a logical transition here. One of the I would say announcements that came out the end of last week was the homelessness number in 2024, which was pegged at an increase of 18%, just over, I think, 700,000, 740,000, give or take, 730,000 identified individuals that are experiencing homelessness. Well, obviously, Habitat for Humanity, one of their main drivers is providing homes for people that either lost them or experience homelessness. But here's the great, interesting challenge is, you read these reports, you read about the homelessness and how much it's increased since COVID, roughly 25% increase, which in 2020 was one of the lowest number. It had actually dipped quite a bit. Here's the challenge I have reading these stories, is especially in a state that has the third highest rate of homelessness in the country. The number one state with the highest rate of homelessness is California, your former state, my former state, former residents of that state. Actually, in the last couple of years, California has dipped in their level of homelessness, which I don't know, are they shipping them out? But anyways, the challenge I have is everyone, when they talk about homelessness, we need to do more to provide homes. We need to do more to provide for people. And here's the challenge I have. Why not ask, why are you homeless? Why not ask what's bringing you to homelessness? We've talked about this in the last few weeks because of the healthcare, the insurance situation, right? And that is one of the leading causes of debt and or financial strife for people, is unforeseen health challenges and having to deal with the cost of healthcare that then puts them into a dire financial spot. Obviously, there is layoffs, there is other, expenses. There is something, very low on the register for why people end up there is because of addictions and abuse. It's usually those are results after the challenge. And I sit here, I'm like, guys, stop looking for a solution because you'll never catch up to the problem. Understand what's the root of the problem. Well, how about we address the fact that California and Washington are two of the most expensive states to live in, and it's only going higher. Having lived here, lived in both of them, they are why not stop and talk about that rather than point the fingers at everyone? Oh, there's not enough homes. Well, there's not enough homes because the ability for builders and developers to build homes and apartments is too difficult because of the cost to operate and be in this state. When you start looking at those micro factors, is like, that's the macro problem. Not the fact that, we don't have enough homes. People would build homes if it made money for them. Come on.
I was kind of deeper diving into the articles because the numbers seemed low to me. The 700, less than 1 million. And I kind of did some more research, and it is probably, I was most likely higher. The biggest thing is, these are the reasons why it's harder to calculate. Transient nature of homeless people, the amount that don't, that are hidden, that are harder to find, harder to count, who's who, avoidance of the counter. So there's tons of people that avoid these counters, that's probably tens of thousands, and then undocumented populations, and then obviously just counting limitations. So The number, because I was looking up how many in Los Angeles alone, there's an estimated 100,000 homeless people in Los Angeles.
So that's roughly 18% of the entire homeless
in the country.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, this number is probably way bigger, and there's probably even more in Los Angeles because that's the estimated. Because I lived in LA and I walked down some of those streets, and it is like you go to another country and it is a city block of encampments of people.
Amberly Lago, podcast guest earlier this winter, left California because she was accosted by a homeless individual, scared the death out of her daughter who was riding a bike with her, and she's like, all right, we're out.
I think, the major affordability, right? Housing, insurance, affordability is at an insane, time right now to afford anything. If you lose your job, the breakdown of what happens there. And if you're already, low income worker and you can barely afford rent and medical coverage, I can see how this just spirals out of control. So I think the other thing that I looked up is the reasons. So these are the top reasons, and mental health challenges and substance abuse orders were lower, but it was lack of affordable housing was number one, which is, I don't know.
Which again, lack of affordable housing to me is yeah, but I think that is, that's a twofold. It's one, do you actually have homes that you can afford with your salary? Or if the rest of it, how does housing get to where it's at? Well, it gets to where it's at because of the cost of labor, the cost of construction, the cost of all the things to it. And it's like, well, those are all driven by some of the regulations, the taxes, all of the things to do that build up to it. So it isn't just housing, it's what all bakes into that housing. Again, yeah. So, okay, yeah. Keep going. So lack of affordable housing, number one. Number two is...
And within that is the rising rent costs, the gentrification, insufficient low-income housing options, and contribution to individuals being unable to secure stable housing.
Well, let me just, share that. If you were to replace a home today, as a renter, as a landlord, you're going to replace that because if something happens, man, the cost of that goes up. So to not think that rent's going to go up, like, man, it has to. Number two, if you were to buy that, what the mortgage would be. But then there's as well the cost of, I know we own a rental house here in Washington, and now all of the different regulations that are being added in, we're forced to raise our rent in order to pay for all of the city fees just to drive their budget. And like, come on here. Understand, it's not people that are greedy driving up rent. It is their increased cost in insurance and utilities, all the other things that are forcing people to maintain margin to make it affordable to own. Here's the other crazy factor is in this area specifically, if we were to go rebuy our house today, the mortgage on it would be significantly like 20% higher than what current rent is. So it's also kind of like, that's a reason why, there's our buddy Grant says, hey, don't buy a house. He's right now. When the mortgage is much higher than what you can rent it for, hey, go rent it, save the difference until the market changes. And then all of a sudden, you can buy a house for less than what you can rent it, then buy.
Well, this is okay. So I went deep, right? I know I kept going into this, right? Because it was just
the rabbit hole was just irresistible.
Well, because it doesn't make sense.
You took the red pill.
I took it because it doesn't all make sense. And as you kind of,
it's right. The red pill is the rabbit hole, right? Or is it the blue pill? I don't remember. I know it's one of the pills.
I took both pills. So because the more I dig deep into government spending, so if you read the HUD, the housing document that just came out, HUD. The government had a budget of $283 billion to spend on affordable housing. And if you calculate it, I did this, I used ChatGPT to help me with the math. I said, how many houses could you build? Multi-family homes could you build with that much money? And it said 1.2 million units, which I said, and I said, how many people would that be? 3.1 million. So that was a 1-year budget for housing, affordable housing. I'm just thinking, okay, over the last 10 years, how the hell is it that the government can't figure out how to build 1 million multifamily units across the country?
year?
Where is this money going to?
And that's kind of Call Vivek. Call Vivek.
Right. And that's where, we talk about Vivek and like the budget, it just seems to me like, where the F is all this money going, Tyler? Like, do you ever think about that? Like, where is this money going?
I mean, here's my opinion on that. I know people that are conspiracy theorists. I know people that are, so distraught about government spending, whatever else. Here's my view on that. You can waste your day worrying about that. If it's your job, if your name is Vivek or Elon and it's your job, great, go for it. If you're a representative and that's your job and the ways and means and like to go through that stuff, go for it. But if you're John P. Public, hey, instead of worrying about how they're wasting your money because you ranting and raving and studying about it is not going to change it. Instead, go figure out what you can do to either benefit society by parlaying your gifts and or understand what options are available so you give them less to waste.
I like the second one. Actually, I like both.
But that's what frustrates me at times. People are like, well, I had to pay so much more in taxes. We're getting to the end of the year, right? It's tax time. So there's two reasons why, unless they do what our government has done, where they just arbitrarily raise taxes without, on the income threshold, which has happened. It's kind of like, if you have to pay more taxes, generally, that's because you made more money. Now, did you use all the advantages at place? Did you, it's kind of like this is, hey, if you're going to walk into a gym, right, and you're going to go on a basketball court, and there are lines on the basketball court where it differentiates between a 2-point shot and a 3-point shot, okay? And if I give you the option, say, hey, Alex, go make a 2-point shot, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to answer this for you. I'm going to stand right underneath the basket, and if I can dunk it, I can dunk it. If not, it's a little easy layup. You're not going to go out to the front edge of the 3-point line and shoot from there.
Put your toes on the 3-point.
Just on the line and shoot from there. And that's what I think people do sometimes in regards to taxes. Like, well, I don't want to, whatever. So I'm going to go stand on top of the 3-point line and shoot, where all you have to do is go and do a layup. The other is, it's a 3-point shot. Do you stand at the end of the baseline as far away from the basket as you can, or go to the line as close as you can, which is actually in the corner because it's closer in the corner than it is at the top. So you go stand.
Is it closer in the corner?
Yeah, it's not a perfect circle. High school it might be, but college and NBA, because the court's not wide enough. So it's closer on the side. Okay. It's hard to use the bank there, so go to the front, use the bank. Come on, there's options, but don't be so far away.
Yeah.
And that's what I ask my tax advisors. Like, I don't want to be over the line, but I want to be as close physically to the line as possible, because if not, you're not. It's like playing basketball and shooting from, shooting a 2 with your foot on the line. It just It doesn't count for.
No, I get it. And ultimately, yeah, we have no control over how the government and the states are allocating and what they're doing with this budget. And, for there always to be this crisis of homelessness and on the rise. The other part that added to, I think, a major part of the increase is the lack thereof a wall and the lack thereof a sort of immigration program has dramatically, we can go into this, but dramatically increased the amount of people that have come to this country that are undocumented, that are homeless, and that are causing trouble.
I saw this the other day, and I actually know this industry. My wife's family is involved in this business. So they're selling off the pieces and parts to the wall. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the pieces and parts that weren't used, they're selling, because that's what they have to do. They don't have an ability to hold on. Once it's done, they just have to dump it.
Right.
And so it's like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of materials to build walls that essentially are being sent for, sold for pennies on the pennies on the pennies of the dollar. And it's why? Because they just have to get rid of it. There's no concept we could do something with this, or, hey, let's store it. They're not allowed to. It's when Clinton decommissioned all of the military bases back in the early 90s, it's kind of like what we did in Afghanistan when we left. It was the same thing. And so there are businesses that thrive on going and taking government materials. Like, I saw this TikTok video. It was great. It was really cool. This guy bought this huge military trailer, and he bought it like a trailer that you're going to guess, I'm just going to speculate, guess, like a $50,000 trailer. It's a flatbed trailer, and that you could pull behind a semi. He went and bought this thing for like $500 because they just dumped it. They had to dump it, and it's an auction, and whoever buys it. Well, it was never used. Never, ever, ever, ever used. All of the like utilities, the straps, the wheelchair, all of the things are still in it, in its plastic package. It's never been used. He could have sold just that stuff and paid for the trailer. And it's just an example. There are people that make a ton of money going and buying and reselling the stuff that the government just dumps.
I mean, they're just dumping all the immigrants into the country as well. Illegal.
That's a whole different conversation.
Well, I mean, I think it's a contribution to the increase in homelessness.
Oh, I mean, here's twofold point of that. One, are they counted as homeless individuals? One, or are they, taking housing spots that are, could be utilized for, citizens? Whatever. I mean, I'm not disputing that portion of it, but it's a figure and a number. I mean, as we kind of wrap up with this, as we kind of come around and we think back about what Jimmy Carter was so much about, is supporting people and caring for people. Well, he was out there swinging a hammer. And I think the challenge here is swinging the hammer the best solution. Hey, it's a part of the solution. Don't get me wrong. It's a part of the solution. But instead of looking down your arm and say, man, it's bleeding again, and you go put a Band-Aid on it, why don't you take the razor blades out of your jacket? Instead, we're not doing that. We're continuing to say, oh, that's not part of the problem. Yeah, that's a main factor. Part of the problem is our cost of living has gone up so tremendously much that is a factor that is driving there. You can't contend, if we saw homelessness drop during a 4-year period between 2016 and 2020, an increase between 2020 and 2024. No logical person in my mind can sit there and say that cost of living did not impact homelessness.
Do you think, tomorrow's New Year's Eve, we're in the holiday spirit still. Okay, we're going into 25. We got the new regime coming in. Affordability and housing. Where do they go? How do they swing this? How do they create more? Does the housing market crash? I was watching The Big Short again for like the third time. Great movie. And just talking about watching it, I'm like, I feel like it's something is going to happen again in like a housing bubble. I think it might be showing its face in a different way. I want your thoughts on that. And then, just overall affordability, when we talk about insurance prices, when we talk about gas, electric, food, how does President Trump and his cabinet start to improve this situation for Americans?
Here's what I see, because I live in it. I'm just telling my son he should watch The Big Short. Because he has this desire. He has a buddy who is a sophomore in high school, has been day trading. He's got like almost a $2 million portfolio. It's pretty cool what this kid has done. Yeah. And so anyways, my son he wants to get involved in it. So Big Short's a great movie to watch. Here's my belief. We are going to see more political relocation in the next 4 years than we've seen in the previous 4. Meaning, I live in a state where the governor has declared, I'm going to fight anything and everything that Trump brings to place. Okay, So he's not going to do anything to make it more affordable for citizens of this state to live here. Okay, so that means you're going to have people in this state go across the border to the state where they've made it affordable for people to live, where I can go to my kid's school, drive an extra 5 miles and save $1 a gallon on gasoline. And that is 100% due to state taxes. That's it. So you're going to see more of that. I think you're going to see states that embrace, the red states, if you want to say, hey, we're going to embrace the deregulation, the trade situations. We're going to embrace this because our citizens really need it. And then you're going to have the states to say, we are the model. We'll show people how to do it that have a $47 billion deficit. Or a state that I led, who's governor-elect, said, I led all of the lawsuits against Trump, and I'm going to do so again in the next 4 years. Yeah, which has a $17 billion deficit. Yeah, those states are going to see citizens leave. And that's just, I've talked to my friend who lives in Massachusetts, feels much the same. And so I think that's what we're going to see over the next 4 years. You're going to see people that are able to move. And here's what's amazing. We've talked about it. We've seen it. I grew up in a very rural part of America, in Ohio, right? And through a generation, you had people leave those states. I think over the next 4 years, we're going to see middle America states start to gain population because of quality of life, affordability. You're going to see people move from the coast, California, Washington, so forth and so on. You're going to see them move back to the middle of America because of housing, cost of living, and general overall quality of life. You're going to start to see some of those communities re-burgeon. That's my opinion. And I think we're going to see that because we have certain political individuals that are going to double down on their insanity of it is this fight for our moral, right, our moral beliefs that represent such a small portion. It is, again, to me, it's akin to the challenge in the NCAA with over 540,000 athletes. And there's a challenge to say, how do we regard transgender athletes? And we're talking about anywhere, I've been reported 10 athletes. Okay, so you're making all these exceptions for 10 instead of trying to figure out how to best fit those 10 to everyone else. You're saying everyone else doesn't matter. And I'll sit here and say, yes, someone who I follow said, hey, leave the 99 to go save the one. All right. I agree with that absolutely wholeheartedly. But when your desire to go save the one means that you're going to kill off the 99, that isn't the way it works. That isn't what it's said by that proverb.
Well, so just to kind of go back real quick.
Where were we?
Where were we? No, but so I just wanted your opinion on this. Do you feel, I just want to go back to housing real quick. In 2008, right, there were all of these delinquencies, right, because they were giving out all of these bogus loans and people were taking out 5, 6 home loans and owning all these houses. Then there was the banks collapsed, people lost many jobs and they couldn't afford, right? There was like this tailwind. Do you foresee a collapse in the banking system or in will jobs be lost? Do you see a crash like that occurring over the next 4 years, or will we avoid something?
Here's what's really interesting to me is I think part of the regulation within banking is going to restrict some of those things from happening again. I believe if there's going to be an undoing, it's going to be more of a personal bankruptcy. I think, and that's what I've thought for a couple of years now, and it's just been delayed and delayed and delayed for whatever reason. I mean, we have now the highest consumer debt per capita ever. That continues to raise and raise and raise. Now, yeah, and one thing that's allowed that to raise is people that have had equity and refinanced their homes.
Okay.
So in other words, hey, I had, our home went from, being worth $500,000. Now it's worth $750,000. Okay. We had $100,000 credit card debt. We're going to go, refinance that. Oh, now we're breathing easy. Again, how you play it. I've thought that for years and I still contend that. I know banks are very, very tight, but I also know there's a ton of money that's been sitting on the sidelines that is yearning for a place to go. I think a lot of that has gone into crypto, and that's why we've seen some of the crypto things gone, volatile, wild, and crazy. I'm not a financial, analyst. I don't study that much other than macro, but it's to me, it's like, man, to be real comfortable and confident in our economy is difficult. And it's one of the things, talking to my son who wants to start trading, is like, we see such a divergence between what's going on in Wall Street compared to what's going on in Main Street.
Yeah.
There's such a dichotomy. It is so far separated that when you go and talk to people, the homelessness number going up, the job challenge,
consumer debt,
all of those things. And yet you have people that on Wall Street are like, we're making more money than we've ever made. It's like, how that just doesn't seem sustainable. Like, where does this get corrected? I don't know what it's going to be. Is it a black swan event? Well, we thought that. Is it,
Yeah. And I'm a natural optimist, and I think a lot of people are. And it was like, in the movie The Big Short, that guy, Dr. I can't remember his last name now, the guy who, like, Christian Bale's character found out this problem in like 2006. And it didn't happen till, I think it was late 2007 or 2008. Maybe it was 2000. So it was like this 2.5, 3 year lag, right, that it took. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, maybe there's just this big lag that we're all, we know something's going to happen, but it's just
one of the things that I learned when I was spending a brief part of my career trading commodities is be very, very afraid. And this is what it said, kind of this Wall Street, Main Street, is when everyone on Main Street saying this is just this is the greatest deal ever. That's when it's to be afraid. And if I look back into, that time period, the 05, 08, that was early in my professional career. Man, I experienced it. Bought a house in 05. We saw it, bought it in March. By December of that year, the quote unquote home value had gone up over 25% to then start ticking down. And a lot of that was driven by what you're saying is like, hey, you got no credit, you got nothing. Great. We'll give you money. You can go buy a house. And people just kept turning them over.
Yeah.
And then there was also pockets in the country. We lived in one in Bakersfield where there was so much fraud going on that, I think there's at least 5 or 6 people that we knew that were either like high school age friends of my wife, who ended up, like one friend who ended up being a informant who had to do a couple years in jail, but got out. But there are people that are still serving because they were fraudulently increasing the value of homes and taking that value and then go buying others. That drove up everyone's home value in that region. It was a hot mess. And I think those you see in different pockets, like The Big Short, they talk about Florida, right? And what was going on there, these empty communities. And it's like, people with all this money, it's like, oh, I'm a dancer and I have, so much money. Okay,
5
great.
houses and 2 condos.
Yes, exactly. When we see that going on, man, that's when it's really, really scary. We're not seeing that, but I think it comes to this. All right, I have no doubt in my mind that the next 4 years are going to look financially different than the last 4 to 6 have. I believe we're going to have to see some massive retraction in order to actually move forward and bring things back in line. What that looks like, I don't know, man. It really, I have no idea, but it's also, it's a borderline. It is very much untenable to continue and not think, we continue to see our dollar devalued. That's the reality of it. And so how does it fix? Man, I don't know.
I love it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate it being here. Alex, it is New Year's Eve today, December 30th. Last time signing off for the year. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, so that way you're notified whenever we drop new content. If you're here on LinkedIn, I'd love for you to say hi, comment what you thought about today's conversation. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.
Happy New Year.